On Tuesday, April 30th, the Manitoba Theatre for Young People announced their 2024-25 season. Advertised as Adventure Awaits, this next year promises to be a fun and engaging season full of exploration, imagination, and education. All 6 shows that MTYP are presenting are sure to be fun for both children and adults. And joining me here in the Classic 107 studio, I am once again joined by Sarah Flynn, who is the Artistic Associate with MTYP. Hey, Sarah, nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
I was on MTYP's website, and the 6 shows look fantastic. A while ago, we were talking about this off air. Can you talk about how far in advance MTYP plans their season and how the season comes together?
It's actually quite a long process. So we're actually, Pablo and I, the artistic director, are already working on the season after this and actually looking at the season after that, because we end up with like 2-3 year plans. And obviously they shift and move, but generally the fall prior to announcing. So in the September, October, November is when we're finalizing the shows that are going to happen next season. And then there's all the other behind the scenes work of the board figuring it out and the marketing and social media and development and all the people that also have to do things around the season and the season announcement, planning their things, the December, January, February, March, and then in April we announce.
Yeah.
So it's at least a year before we are already talking to people, figuring out what the shows are going to be, planning those seasons.
And just sort of laying it out. One of the things you were talking about the last time you were here is that there is an actual agency that advertises for children's plays, sort of shops them around. How does that work? And is it a decision that Pablo, helped me with the pronunciation, Felices Luna, your artistic director, does he get the final say as to what gets presented?
Yeah, so Pablo gets the final say. It's his season that he is deciding on and presenting. I help with that as his artistic associate. But, together we do it, but he's the final say. But yeah, as far as agencies and stuff, it's actually this really interesting thing and I think it happens for adult theater as well, but in children's theater, you have these sort of management, representations for companies. And so they'll pick out these shows that various companies are creating, and they will then sell them to places like MTYP that brings companies from across Canada, across the States, and across the world to their theater. So they work with all sorts of different companies, and then they help them get booked different places. And it's huge in the States because there's a lot of theaters that'll do a couple of shows throughout the year that they bring in, whereas we also have the shows we produce, so we do a mix. And there's more of that sort of mix in Canada, but it's a huge business. It's a huge production all happening to make these shows happen and get places and get them seen and all that stuff.
And I'm sure built into the contract is things like travel and hotels,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah, it's all part of it. We negotiate so many things with the companies and with the artists and to make sure that they are here and that they're getting what they need in return for their incredible work.
Okay, I want to get to this season. Firstly, starting on October the 10th and going until November 3rd, you have Where the Wild Things Are, based on Maurice Sendak's classic book. I remember a few years ago, MTYP presented this before. Why do you think this one is such a hit with audiences?
This one is just wild fun. And I mean, the amount of people that know the books and they are so precious to their childhood and so important to them, and then we bring it to life on stage, and it's done with 2 actors, and one of them plays Max and one of them plays everything else, and it's interactive with the audience, and the kids are sitting kind of almost in a half circle around the stage on the floor, and it's fully immersive, and it's all about Max and his adventure.
So how close does it follow along to the book?
It's not like a word for word adaptation, whereas you get some of those ones that are more word for word. This is more the storyline and the experience. Is sort of like the book. Book.
I got to confess, The Wild Rumpus freaked me out when my mom read Where the Wild Things Are to me as a kid. We had a copy that she would read often, and as well as all the other wild things. You talked about it. They're just 2 characters.
Well, there's 2 actors.
2 actors. Okay.
Yeah. So there's Max, and then there's the other actor who does everything else that happens in this world that is created around Max.
So how quickly do the costume changes have to happen? Is it
I don't know. It's not like a specific costume change. It's more of like in the body and in the what they're doing in space. It's sort of It's an interesting like adaptation of it. Create a little more creative, a little more imaginative, that kind of thing to make it happen.
That's fantastic. So Where the Wild Things Are runs from October 10th until November 3rd. Next, we have A Year with Frog and Toad, which runs from December 6th to the 29th of December. This is an MTYP production, but am I right? It's based on the Frog and Toad children's stories by Arnold Label. Am I right about that?
Yes, it's based on his children's stories, and then there was music written to it by Robert and Willie Reel, and they turned it into a musical. And so this is the Theater for Young Audiences version, so it's just like a slightly shorter version. There is a full version that's like been on Broadway and won awards and whatnot. This is the slightly shorter one that works better for young people. But yeah, so it's all about their stories, and it's a year in their life, a year with Frog and Toad, and with their other, toad and snail and bird and everything friends.
And I saw a trailer for it from another theater company, and it looks like a straight up musical. In fact, the music sounds like it came right out of vaudeville. Can you talk a little bit more about the plot line and how they sing through the seasons in the play?
Yeah, so you really started out, and it's the Frog and Toad are waking up from winter, from being kind of in hibernation, and the birds wake them up, and then we follow them through all of spring, into summer, into fall, and back into their hibernation at winter, and we follow their friendship and their the ways in which that sometimes they want to be together, sometimes they don't, and they do all these fun adventure things together, and there's cookies falling from the sky, and it's just like it's just so fun and so sweet and heartwarming and beautiful. It's an incredible show, and I'm so excited that we're producing it again and bringing it back.
Mm-hmm. Can you touch on some of the life lessons that they learn during the play?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Frog that sometimes just like needs some alone time, and like that's a lesson for Toad to like figure out that doesn't have anything to do with you, Toad. It's just that Frog needs alone time. And I know that Toad struggles with growing seeds and having patience for flowers to bloom and for things that he's growing to grow. And so that's a lesson that Toad learns. And there's a whole plot line throughout of the snail trying to deliver a letter from Frog to Toad, because Toad never gets any mail. But when you give a letter to a snail, yeah, it takes a year for it to get to the house, despite it being like across the stage. And so that's another like that patience in that, but also that care and giving something to your friend that they like that's going to make their day, even if it's just a letter.
Yeah, that sounds like it's so much fun.
It's so fun.
Okay, so that's a year with Frog and Toad, and again that goes from December 6th to December the 29th. Next, we've got Life Cycle, which goes from January 17th through to January 26th, 2025. This is a production that is done by Montreal-based Dynamo Theatre. I saw the trailer for this on their website, and it's just simply beautiful. There's acrobatics, and my understanding is that the bike is used for a metaphor. Can you talk about the play a bit?
Yeah, so it's this one-man show, and it's all told through acrobatics and movement and visuals. So there's no speaking on stage at all, and he does some incredible acrobatics, tricks with this bicycle, and it becomes this magical world. It is absolutely magical the way he brings the bike to life, and he brings these photos of his family to life, and he's been gone for a long time, and he doesn't know how to reconnect with this family history that he finds when he gets home. So he travels through that discovery, and the bicycle sort of helped transport him through that journey that he goes on. And it's also just magic.
Yeah,
it's so cool.
Yeah, the trailer was just the trailer's like a minute and a half long, and it was just
it's stunning. It's a stunning show. It's very Montreal. It's very artsy, but like also easy to connect with and just enjoy the magic of. But there's also that real heart underneath it.
Mm-hmm. And it's like my understanding is the bicycle is it's more than an object. It's like a fundamental component of life. There's this sort of thing that you need to keep riding the bike just to keep going.
Yeah, if you want to take like a lesson from it, it's definitely like you got to get back on the bike. You got to keep going.
Mm-hmm. As a bike guy myself, I was impressed with how the bike is incorporated into the acrobatic stunts. It is really amazing. But judging from the trailer, there's also some amazing use of props. There's like kites, and then there's the bike moving without a rider. There's papers flying around on a desk without any...
The desk is really cool. He like climbs up the desk. It's a stairwell for him. There's these pictures of his family members that come to life through puppetry. It's amazing. It's so breathtaking visually.
So for you, what are you most looking forward to about seeing it?
Oh, I want to see the reaction from the young people around me when things that they don't know how it happens on stage start happening.
Yeah.
When they're like, wait, what? How is that possible?
Yeah.
That's not, like, that defies physics. That defies the world that we actually live in, but they're able to do it on stage because it's magic.
Yeah. It looks amazing.
Blows their little minds.
Mm-hmm. So that's Life Cycle. Again, that runs from January 17th to the 26th, 2025. Then coming up at the end of February of 2025, MTYP is presenting Blue Beads and Blueberries, which is running from February the 21st through to March 2nd. This one is very much a celebration of Métis culture. Can you talk about the plotline a bit?
Yeah, so this one is based on an old folktale called Capel Rushes about this father who, he sends his daughter out when his daughter can't explain why her love is, important and how her love is so big and whatnot. And so he feels slighted by this response. So he casts her out, and then she goes off on this adventure where she, gets to a big house, and she goes in and she ends up making friends with the people that work there. And then they end up planning a gala or a ball. And then she ends up meeting I don't think it's a prince in this version. It's something else in this version, but like the equivalent of the prince. And then it sort of gets Cinderella-y where like she leaves partway through the night and he can't find her, but he has this one beaded earring that she left. So then he tries to find her through the beaded earring. But it's like a plot. It's like a story within a story because it's this father telling this story about, this father and his daughters to his two daughters. And it's really cute. It's really exciting. And it's actually on tour as well after. So we have the main stage run February 21st to March 2nd. And then it's going to schools across Manitoba for 10 weeks. Fantastic.
Yeah. It is an MTYP production. Who is the creator? Like, who did the adaptation for the stage?
Yeah, so it's written by Erin Macklem. She is a Métis playwright who is based in BC. She can trace her roots back all the way through some of northern U.S. and then back to St. Norbert. And so the show is set in St. Norbert, and one of the characters is named after one of her ancestors. And so she's been reconnecting to that heritage and that, Winnipeg, Manitoba connection that she has. And so she first wrote this as like a 30-minute piece for Storybook Theatre in BC that does a different sort of timeline of they do a half-hour show and then a half-hour workshop. And Pablo read it and was like, I love this. Can we make it longer? Can we make it like a 55-minute, hour-long show? And she was like, totally. And now it's like a bit long and we need to shrink it again because it's so full of ideas and life and beauty. But so we've been working on developing it for a couple of years now. And it's finally going to be ready to go on stage.
That's fantastic.
This year.
I was reading a summary that's on your website, and apparently there are some jigs in the show. And as a musician, I have to ask, who's going to be providing the music for the show, or has that been laid out?
The music's all composed by a musician named Avery Brown. So they've worked very closely with Erin throughout the process of writing it to create these songs that the characters sing, that as well as that they dance to, that are interspersed throughout the story.
Wow, it's going to be great.
Yeah.
There are beaded earrings, there's embroidered sashes, and it's described as an ancient fairy tale that is turned into a celebration of Métis culture. Have you seen the costumes? What are they like?
They haven't been designed yet.
No,
because it's an MTYP production. It hasn't been done before. This is, in a lot of ways, it's a world premiere. So we will be hiring the costume designers and the set designers, and over the course of the next, between now and when it opens in February, they will be creating all of that from scratch.
Wow, that's going to be great. What do you hope audiences are going to take away from Blue Beads and Blueberries?
You know, it's a celebration of family. It's a celebration of Métis culture. It's a celebration of storytelling and the importance of keeping those oral traditions alive. And I think that's going to be really important for people to see.
Totally. Okay, so that's Blue Beads and Blueberries. That's running from February 21st through to March 2nd. Up next, you've got Gruffalo's Child, and that's going from the 21st to the 30th of March. It is a Tall Stories of London production. And here again, we've got another adaptation from a children's book, a picture book by Julia Donaldson and Axel Scheffler. First of all, what is a gruffalo? And secondly, can you talk about the woods and this whole question of the big bad mouse? What's this one about?
So this one is a sequel to the show that we had, and that's based off the book that the show we had last season, The Gruffalo, is about. So The Gruffalo tells the story of the mouse running away from all these, you know, the snake and the owl and the fox, and he's explaining, I'm gonna go meet my friend the Gruffalo. He's got, you know, big hands and a furry body, and he's got his little horns, and he makes up this story of this Gruffalo so that these other animals won't eat him. And then it ends up that the Gruffalo is real. So in this version, the Gruffalo has a child, and the Gruffalo is telling the child, like, you have to be careful of the big bad mouse. Because in the original one, the mouse ends up telling the Gruffalo, oh, you can't eat me. Like, all these other animals are scared of me. And when the Gruffalo finds out that all those animals are afraid of the mouse, the Gruffalo's like, well, I guess I have to be afraid of the mouse. So they then warn their child to be afraid of the mouse. So then the Gruffalo's like, well, I want to see, like, I want to meet this big bad mouse, and like goes on this adventure and meets all these animals and tells them about the big bad mouse. And it's a whole sort of the re-unraveling of that original story, but through the child of the Gruffalo's eyes.
It's fantastic. Yeah, and again, I saw a trailer. Thank goodness for trailers. The costume of the Gruffalo looks...
Oh, it's so fun.
Looks great.
It's so good. And I mean, I just remember when the guy who plays the Gruffalo came out on opening night last year after that one, and all of the kids just swarmed him, and they were like, you were amazing, and you're so scary, and all this stuff. And I'm just so excited for all those kids get to experience that again, but with a new story.
It looks hilarious. It's full of songs as well. Who are Tall Stories London? They look like they're just a hilarious theater company. Can you talk about them a bit?
Yeah, I mean, they're great. They're a company that works out of London. They do all theater for young audiences. They do a ton of puppetry, a ton of like bright colored costumes. They really go kind of into that old style TYA with the touring sets and the big songs and the big costumes and the big storylines that are based on books. And so they're like that classic, beautiful TYA that the kids just gravitate towards it, and they just leave beaming.
Yeah, and it sounds like a play that all they really want is just kids to use their imagination, right?
Oh yeah, it's all about exploring and finding your own adventure and using your imagination.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Gruffalo's Child, and that goes from March 21st to the 30th of 2025. Rounding out the 2024-25 season, we have Billy and the Moon. And this one goes from May 2nd to May 11th, 2025. This is an MTYP production again, and it's all about summer camp. Can you talk about who wrote this and who's producing it?
So MTYP is producing it. It started it's written by a playwright named Ren Bryan, and she started writing it in the creators unit that MTYP has. So she started writing it years ago in that creators unit, and we've done a couple of workshops of it since, and we're finally bringing it to stage, and we're so excited for her and for us because it's just this beautiful piece about a young character named Billy who has to go to camp but really would rather, you know, hang out on their own and read a book maybe, and camp is just chaotic and there's all these kids running around and teachers telling him what to do, and he just like needs some space. And so they end up going to the beach and they start talking to the moon to try and have somebody that understands them and understands that they're just a bit of an introvert and like they don't always want to do the wild, crazy summer camp things that a lot of the other kids want to do. And then the moon talks back. So then Billy ends up with this beautiful relationship with the moon, and they want to go see the moon, and they want to build a rocket ship, and it becomes this whole adventure that Billy wants to go on to be with their friend the moon.
Yeah, make believe. What are some of the themes that the play touches on?
It talks a lot about friendship and about respecting other people's needs and their boundaries, and that the way different people interact with different people is going to be different, and that it's all wonderful and lovely, and it's just a different relationship. Maybe Billy doesn't want to shoot arrows, but would really love to like read that book with you about animals because that's really cool and that's your interest too. And it's just like navigating those friendships for young people that can be complicated because you want to do what you want to do, but you also want to fit in, but then that doesn't always work. And so, all these different campers trying to get along and
it just
work
seems
together.
It just seems like a great way for kids to teach kids empathy towards other kids and just, respecting that. I mean, I had a great time at summer camp, but again, a large part of it is just learning how to deal with people.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love summer camp, but I was an extrovert. Yeah. So I wanted to run around and scream like all the other kids, but there's a lot of kids that are like, no, I'd rather actually do this quiet activity. And they are just as fun and wonderful and deserving of friendship.
Totally. Sarah, this upcoming 2024-25 season of the MTYP Theater for Young People sounds just amazing. Where can people go to book either school performances, because you have the school performances, or get tickets for regular shows?
Yeah, so teachers that want to book school performances just need to email our school sales coordinator, Jess, at salescoordinator@mtyp.ca. If you want to get public tickets, you can either come down at the box office in person, you can email the box office, or you can call the box office, or you can book them online through mtyp.ca.
Perfect. And for our Classic 107 listeners, those links I've embedded into the article that you can find up at classic107.com. Sarah, this has just been so excellent talking about what is sure to be a phenomenal 2024-25 season. Adventure awaits is a perfect description for the lineup of plays. Thanks so much for taking the time and being so generous of it and stopping by and talking to me today. This has been great.
Thanks for having me.